I want to talk to you in this session on the subject of developing an intolerance for the status quo. You might ask, why are things the way they are? I want to whisper in your ear really strongly, because we allow them. I have a little motorcycle. It's a 125. It's like two sewing machines put together, but it is so much fun. When I look up in planes, I was going to be a pilot. When I look at planes, I feel sorry for them. I'm like, oh, you're just flying, but I'm flying on my motorcycle. On the ground, I'm flying. And I love that motorcycle, but there's a certain little city nearby that when I go through, that city is full of potholes. I mean, you have to really watch. You could kill yourself just going down a city block. It has so many potholes. And why is it that way? Because we allow it to be that way. Why is there graffiti on walls in inner cities? Because we allow them. Now, obviously, there's other complex answers to things, but most of it is a tolerance of the status quo. Wherever you see great poverty and great neediness, there's almost a tolerance for it. There needs to be a developing of an intolerance for the status quo and for change. Now, there was a circus that was not satisfied with the status quo that said, how can we change the circus so that animals are not cooped up and manipulated to perform and to make money for us? And so they got a bunch of screens and they project holograms. So they kept the acrobats, they kept all the whole thing, but the animals are all projected into. And you can see a YouTube, we give you a link in the notes. You can see a YouTube of that circus. So none of the animals are really alive. They're just all holographic animals. And you have a circus experience through just saying, oh, we don't like the status quo here. We don't like how this is. Now, many of you have been through cities or maybe even live in a city that's urban and maybe there's a lot of ugliness to it. And what could we do about that? How could we change that? You know, there's an artist, Jan Deman. Jan is Deman is his name. Jan is Deman. And he'll take people, and we've got an illustration of this for you in the notes, of a building, say an apartment building. It looks bleak. It looks just urban. And he'll interview all the people in the building and ask their favorite books, and then paint a three-dimensional library on the side of the building. You could see that picture in the notes. An intolerance of the status quo is always asking questions. Why are things the way they are? How can we change them? What will it take? Who should we get involved? There's a tiny little city called Ojai nearby us, and it had the highest suicide rate of all our 10 cities in Ventura County at one time. And so it also had the highest amount of elderly people. So we thought, well, how can we combine, remember creativity is combining things that haven't been combined. How can we combine the elderly people with young people that are about to commit suicide? So people got together and they came up with a thing called Inspire. Now, Inspire asks everybody in the city to give 1 hour a year to public schools. It could be banana bread for the teachers' lounges. It could be teaching a TED Talk. It could be just shooting hoops. We had one 70-year-old lady who would get up on Thursday mornings, I think it was, and she would shoot hoops. She was a basketball player in college, and she would shoot hoops with a school bully, and the principal said that changed that bully to have a friend. So an intolerance for the status quo means an action mindset. It means asking the curiosity, why are things the way they are? Asking lots of questions, asking what might be required, asking how can we change this? How can we do this differently? Someone said the 7 last dying words of any institution is, but we've never done it that way before. Well, why not? Why not today? Why not discover new cures through curiosity, asking lots of questions? Why are things the way they are? Because we tolerate them. How could we develop an intolerance? Here in America, there was once a very huge tolerance of drunk driving. It was kind of like, well, he was just drunk. But then a mother had her son killed, and she started a thing called Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It was called MADD, M-A-D-D. And she fomented such an intolerance in America that drunk driving got stiffer and stiffer sentences. People used to just smoke constantly everywhere you went. You know, when I'm around cigarette smoke, my brain just starts swelling out my ears. I mean, I literally just have this crushing headache when I smell the slightest bit of cigarette smoke. But that was tolerated for years until someone fomented an intolerance about that thing and used creative things. Drugs were just considered, well, that's just how the 60s are going to be. That's just, people are just going to take drugs. But someone creatively took a hot cast iron skillet and had an egg and said, this is your brain, showed the egg, this, and then cracked it and fried it and said, this is your brain on drugs. Well, did that solve everything? No, but there's certain ways that you can foment creatively an intolerance to the status quo. And we want to encourage you to do that. We have some, in the notes, we have some questions you can ask about things in your city that have never been changed or that need to change because of high suicide rates or whatever. We really encourage you to go to the notes, because the strength of this course is in the book itself, which is in the notes. And there's an explore place, there's also plunge deeper, and there's quotable quotes that will help kind of supplement your understanding of the thing. I hope you become graciously intolerant about every dysfunction, and that you encourage people to bring cure to it. And I believe you're one of the people that will bring cure to some dysfunction, some tolerance of the status quo that someone needs to turn over, upend that apple cart and say, we're going to do this differently. We're going to think about this differently. We're going to look at this differently. There was a little girl, third grader in Mexico, that noticed that all the trees around her surrounding state in Mexico were being chopped down. So her intolerance about that caused her to develop a solar water heater that would heat water without burning wood. And so she was the first, she's a third grader, she was the first person to, a female, to get an award from a university in Mexico for her discovery. You don't have to be educated, you don't have to be old, you don't have to be rich, you just have to have an intolerance for the status quo. You just have to look and go, this can be better. What will it take? How do we get people involved? What kind of creative ways will we spread the vision for this to change? I encourage you to go to the explore section of your notes and to plunge deeper and the quotable quotes.